Welcome to the presentation by Georgia Legal Services Family Law Project. Let me introduce myself. I'm Vicki Kimbrell, the Project Director.
And I'm Tamika Daniel, the Managing Attorney of our Macon office.
We wanted to share with you what GLSP can do for survivors of family violence. We're then going to close with a story that illustrates the work that our lawyers can do with your help and support. Tamika, the first question I always get is, why doesn't she just leave?
Vicki, that is a question that I get asked over and over again. And whenever I'm asked that question, I like to turn the question around. Instead of asking, why does she stay? The real question is, why does he feel that it's okay to abuse his partner? Let's shift the blame from the survivor and place it squarely on the back of the abuser, which is where it belongs. There are so many reasons why a survivor will stay in an abusive relationship. The reasons are often very complex. She may be afraid that he may kill her or take her children if she leaves. She may not have her own resources to start over in a new location without him. She may not have a support system to help her navigate the legal systems. Many survivors feel that they have no options when trying to leave an abusive relationship. But Georgia Legal Services program is here to provide survivors with available options. Vicki, what does Georgia Legal Services do to help these survivors?
Well, last year during the pandemic, Georgia Legal Services helped about 4,000 victims. Last year was just unique because of COVID. Victims were forced sometimes just to stay in their homes because they were afraid of getting sick. They had no place to go. But once the pandemic let up a bit, Georgia Legal Services has seen our numbers increase. We represent survivors to get protective order, custody, housing. We've provided a rental assistance program for the past 5 years. We've paid utility payments, transportation. We get health care through Medicaid and Peach Care, SNAP, food stamps, child support. We provide what we call holistic representation, not just the protective order or divorce, but the financial stability for survivors to support themselves and their children. In the past 20 years of our project, Georgia Legal Services has represented 52,000 family violence survivors. Every client has their own unique story. But generally, for GLSP, 95% of our clients are women, 5% are men, 55% are white, 35% are African American, and 10% are other races like Hispanic or Asian. Family violence occurs in all income levels, but more than 2/3 of our cases are for families below 125% of the federal poverty level. And we've represented survivors in every single one of our 154 counties outside of Metro Atlanta. From the cities to the smallest towns in rural Georgia, we can provide legal representation. We also help with financial stability so that survivors have the ability to become independent and not have to go back to their batterers. In the past 25 years of our project, we've secured over $50 million for our clients in child support, housing, medical care, child care, so that victims can escape violence and start their new lives. Now, Tamika, this is how we help victims. Is there anything that we can do to prevent domestic violence?
In 2012, we created the Teen Dating Violence Project. Now, the catalyst behind that project was a conversation that I had with an 11-year-old girl who shared with me that her 17-year-old boyfriend had been physically abusive towards her, and she didn't know what to do, had no idea where to turn. And you can imagine I was shocked and outraged by her story and knew that we had to do something to help other young people in her shoes. Through the Teen Dating Violence Prevention Project, we've been able to reach thousands of youth by defining dating violence and sharing with them the warning signs that they should watch out for. Additionally, we're able to educate them about resources in their community that can be used to help them stay safe. We've conducted presentations statewide at middle, high schools, and even colleges. Our goal is to reach young people and arm them with the information in hopes that we will prevent them from becoming a victim in the future. Now, Vicki, how can everybody that's watching us here today help a family violence survivor?
Well, the first thing is to help us get the word out. To be that neighbor or that friend who gives the Georgia Legal Services number out. People can reach us at 833-457-7529 or www.glsp.org. They can also call the Family Violence 24-hour shelter number, and that is at 800-334-2936. You know, some people say that a protective order is just a piece of paper, but studies show that a lawyer is the most important support that a victim can have. Shelters, law enforcement, counseling, all of those pieces are important. But 75% of the time after a protective order, the violence is stopped or substantially reduced. You know, that's a pretty good success rate. Having a lawyer can mean the difference between stopping DV or staying in a violent home for victims and their children. And know about the financial supports like rental assistance or Medicaid, or at least know enough to send them to Georgia Legal Services. Most importantly, the thing that a victim needs more than anything, when a victim tells you her story, listen and believe. Now here's Grace's story.
My name is Grace, and I met and married a man from America who promised me a new life. He brought me to a small town in rural South Georgia where we lived far out in the country with no neighbors, no friends, and no family. Soon after we arrived in America, my husband began to abuse me. He even beat me while I was pregnant. My husband told me I could not leave him because he owned me. I had no money, I had nowhere to go, and I had no job. He told me that if I left, he would take my little girl and I would never see her again. He said that if I left, he would call immigration and have me deported. Then the worst part began. My husband stopped bringing home food or paying the bills, and he said that I would have to start having sex with other men to earn money. My husband put my picture online and started making dates to prostitute me out to other men for money. I had nowhere to turn. Should I stay where I was, or should I strike out into the unknown? One day when my husband was gone, I took my daughter and we walked to the nearest neighbor's house, and I asked for help. And my neighbor took me to a local family violence shelter. I escaped, but it was a small town and I knew he would find me. The shelter told me how to contact Georgia Legal Services program. But did you know that often you can only stay in a battered women's shelter for 30 days? They have so many women and children who need help with a place to stay. I applied for housing, but the waiting list was more than a year long. Georgia Legal Services helped me get Medicaid and food stamps to feed us. They also helped me apply for victims' compensation. That included counseling and help with medical bills. Georgia Legal Services also connected me with a prosecutor's office. But my biggest problem was that my immigration visa had expired, and my husband refused to sign for me because he wanted me to get deported. If I didn't have a worker's permit, I could never get a job to support myself or my child. I would have to consider dropping the charges and going back to my husband. My husband was out of jail and he was hunting me. The shelter moved us to another small rural Georgia town. My husband always told me that as long as we were married, I belonged to him. My Georgia Legal Services lawyer helped me get a temporary protective order that gave me the most important thing in my life, and that was custody of my child. The day of my hearing was one of the hardest days of my life. Could you stand in a room in front of strangers and tell your deepest, darkest secrets? I had to tell the judge about the beatings, the threats, the rapes, and being sold for sex. So when the judge gave me custody of my child and my freedom from this man, I cried. I got a job and a car and an apartment. My little girl and I struggle with memories, but at last we have a chance at a new life. Thank you, Georgia Legal Services Program. Thank you to your lawyers, staff, and supporters. We're free.
Hi, this is Vicki Kimbrell with Georgia Legal Services. I'm going to talk to you today about Georgia Legal Services family violence projects. So the first question is, what is family violence? Family violence is a pattern of abuse in an intimate or family relationship where one person assumes a position of power and control to cause fear. Family violence takes many forms. It can be physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, economic, or legal abuse. Georgia Legal Services tries a two-pronged approach to family violence. First, we try to look at the systemic change. What can we do to change the environment in our communities? And secondly, we represent survivors in civil legal services cases across Georgia. To end systemic change and to make sure that we end domestic violence, we have to combat gender bias. We have to end racial inequity, and we have to create economic justice across our state. So what happened to family violence survivors during this last year? In 2020, during the COVID pandemic, calls to family violence and sexual assault centers increased by 46%. In Georgia, from October 2019 to September 2020, more than 95,000 victims of family violence and sexual assault called hotlines for help. So what kind of civil legal services can Georgia Legal Services provide? We represent clients in protective orders, in family violence orders, in stalking orders, and dating violence cases. We access health care for trauma-informed counseling. We provide educational services to keep children in school after they've been exposed to family violence. We secure or protect housing for survivors. We also try to make sure that our clients have the best financial security possible to start independent lives. We provide access to Medicaid. We help people apply for and obtain Peach Care and Affordable Care Act services. There are prescription assistance programs that we try and access for clients. We provide SNAP access to food stamps whenever there's a barrier to getting these kinds of benefits. Tanf is a small cash assistance payment for victims that we can help survivors obtain. We help people apply for victims' compensation, which can be up to $25,000 for medical bills, for counseling, or for loss of support. Most recently, we've had lots of inquiries about the child tax credits, which have been going out to families with children. When clients and families need help accessing and getting those tax credits, we provide information and assistance. For the past 5 years, we've had a Survivors United rental assistance program where we can pay rent and utilities and moving costs and insurance costs for survivors. We also make child support services referrals to help victims collect the child support they're entitled to. Research shows the most effective way to end family violence in our communities is through a coordinated community response. This puts the responsibility for ending family violence on the community, not on the victim. A coordinated community response joins all the multidisciplinary community partners that are out there to provide interagency assistance for survivors. Under our Rural Department of Justice grant, we provide education, training, and outreach for law enforcement, courts, judges, lawyers, hospitals, advocates, employers, workforces, political leaders, and survivors on the best practices to keep communities safe from family violence. We need to make sure that all of our communities hear survivors' voices, that they have the data that they need to make responsible decisions, that every piece of the community is trained on how they should appropriately respond to family violence. Political leaders, courts, we all need to know what's been shown to be the most effective way to respond. Our victim legal assistance program makes sure that we are victim-centered. We don't require victims to go through in our different pigeonholes and make sure they fit our needs. We ask the survivor, what do you need? And when the survivor tells us, we're able to provide civil legal services. We can provide through our partners immigration representation in victim in VAWA cases, in U and T visa cases. We want to make sure that all of our services are provided in culturally specific ways. We have partners through RACSHA, through CPACs, through the Latin American Association, through the Deaf and Hard of Hearing services in Georgia that can appropriately respond to our clients. The criminal system is indispensable to holding batterers accountable, but we need to make sure that that system works for our clients. We have to make sure that they're economically self-sufficient and that their health care is accessible. We also need to make sure that victims understand that we are here and available for them. Last year, through our Victim Legal Assistance Network, we created a website that has all of this information and all of the information that a victim might need online and available to a client. We also have, through our VLAN program, 8 navigators. We can provide assistance to get through the barriers that victims can face when they're trying to access services. And our VLAN rental assistance program, Survivors United, has provided rental cash for the past 5 years to victims so that they can stay in their homes once they've gotten safe. Now I'm going to talk to you about our Kinship Care project. The Georgia Legal Services and Atlanta Legal Aid Kinship Care Project is a statewide project that provides civil legal services to kinship care families. Georgia Legal Services focuses on rural communities in Georgia. We have 154 counties outside Metro Atlanta. Atlanta Legal Aid serves the 5 metro counties. The purpose of the Kinship Care Project is to stabilize those legal relationships between the caregiver and the child. This can include grandparents, brothers, sisters, aunts, or any other relative. But it can also include what we call fictive kin, and that can be friends or neighbors who are taking care of an unrelated child. The secondary goal of this project is to ensure financial security for these families. We can help apply for and get Social Security, Medicaid, grandparents raising grandchildren, or adoption assistance benefits. Let me tell you Dondi's story. After losing his father in 2013, 11-year-old Dondi lost his mother on his birthday in 2019. Mr. and Miss Jackson were Dondi's maternal grandparents, and they immediately assumed care of their grandson. At 71 and 63, Mr. and Miss Jackson were retired and did not expect to be raising another child. They lived in South Georgia, in Lowndes County, and they contacted Georgia Legal Services Project for help. The Jacksons wanted to be able to provide a stable home and to provide for him financially. By finalizing the adoption, Mr. and Miss Jackson gave Dondi a permanent home, got him into school, got his Medicaid, and the family is now able to collect Social Security benefits based on Mr. Jackson's account for Dondi. So what kind of legal relationships are there with kinship care? Well, the first thing we can do is provide just a power of attorney for a caretaker. We can also help with guardianships, where the probate court can help formalize a relationship. We can get custody for grandparents or relatives through the juvenile courts or the superior courts. We can also help with adoptions to formalize that parent-child relationship. What kind of benefits can children in kinship care receive? These children are all entitled to Medicaid or Peach Care or Affordable Care Act coverage. These families need SNAP or food stamps sometimes to subsidize the food in the family. We can help with Social Security or SSI applications. We can help if there's a problem with the subsidized housing or the shelter issues. There's a benefit called grandparents raising grandchildren that many of these families qualify for, or adoption assistance if the family intends to adopt the child. We can help with education cases. We can even help with tax credits to make sure that the family gets the tax credit they're entitled to get. The Kinship Care Project also helps train lawyers and judges on kinship care. We train lawyers and judges on how important it is to keep these families together and to keep these children out of the foster care system. Georgia Legal Services Kinship Care Project has attorneys in Savannah, Brunswick, Piedmont, which are the counties around Metro Atlanta, and we have a statewide advice line attorney. This flyer shows you the impact across the state of this project. We have served 1,146 children under this project, 585 grandparents. We represented clients in 79 counties across metro and rural Georgia. 57% of the cases that we handle were for families outside of Atlanta's 5 major counties. And importantly, the state has saved an estimated $4.2 million with this project by keeping children out of the foster care system. If you want help from the Georgia Legal Services Kinship Care Project, call our main number at 833-457-7529 or 833-GLSP Law.